same old place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all changed since you hung around, but those dreams have remained and they've turned around. Who'd have thought they'd lead ya? Who'd have thought they'd lead ya? Back here where we need ya. Back here where we need ya. Yeah, the tease him a lot, 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? All right, so I don't know how people can like use YouTube and be productive. I've just spent most of this time for my for the work session just going down this YouTube rabbit hole on compression packing cubes. Oh man, it's like it's never ending, and I totally forgot that. I go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be doing this thing here. So thank goodness for the break session, because it kind of got me out of that ever deepening like abyss of just YouTube videos and just getting sucked into it. So I think I might be close to a decision. So so I'm deciding between like packing cubes and compression packing cubes. I'm leaning towards more compression packing cubes so I can get as much space, I think. We'll see. I don't know. Again, I don't know what else looking at YouTube reviews would like help me pick. All right, so let's just get into this. So like I said, I'm woefully underprepared, but I was kind of checking it out right before this. And so I found this tweet. I saw this tweet pop up on my timeline. And so let me share my screen. And it seems like it kind of shows like how browsers are getting more and more like powerful. And so certain tools that we use are kind of changing to be able to fit that. And so I wanted to show this. So this is, let me share this. So I'm going to also copy the link and put it with a recorded video so you can always check it out for yourself. All right, so I came across this on Twitter, like I said, and this is from TypeScript. So people that may not know, TypeScript is like a superset of JavaScript, and it allows for type checking and some other stuff. And so with that, let's say you want a value to only be a number, because in JavaScript, everything is like whatever you want it to be. So you could have something where like the same variable, let's say variable, I don't know, variable X, right? So X, you can set that equal to 5, the number 5, right? But then later on, you can set X to be cat, like the string cat. And JavaScript's like, cool, I see no problems here. Which is, I mean, so yeah. So with that being said, a lot of people don't want that to happen. And so that's where TypeScript kind of came about. And so you can actually set types. So you can say like X, I only want to be a number. And so if somebody tries to enter in, like try to set it to a string like cat, you'll get an error when it's being compiled like, yo, cat is not a number, fam. What are you thinking? So yeah, so that's where TypeScript kind of comes in, at least part of it. And so I came across this. So yeah, so like I mentioned, you have to compile it. So that's a build step. That's an extra step from you coding to getting it on the web. You know what I'm saying? You have to build it. And so I came across this tweet and I was like, could we have TypeScript with no build step? I'm like, oh, interesting. So you can make sure things are the way you want them to be, but without building them. You know what I'm saying? To check it, the compilation build step. And they said maybe. And so could we have types in JavaScript? So that's what we're saying. We're exploring bringing optional type syntax into the JavaScript language. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So how are they going to do that? And so that link takes me to here. So it's a blog. I was kind of reading it earlier. I'm going to add this to the actual thing as well. All right, so I also added the link to the, so it'll be next to the recorded video. All right, so this happened on the 9th, so like 4 days ago. Today, we're excited to announce our support and collaboration on a new stage 0 proposal. So stage 0 means like, hey, we have this cool idea. What do you think? So there's like nothing really, there's just like an idea now, right? There's like a bunch of different stages that have to happen in order for be actual put into JavaScript. All right. So a new stage 0 proposal to bring optional and erasable type syntax to JavaScript. Because this new syntax wouldn't change how surrounding code runs, it would effectively act as comments. So you know how like sometimes you'll want to like have a little bit more extra information in your code, maybe to remind another developer or you in the future, like what was going on there. You can, so same thing. So they're talking about kind of using that same sort of idea for type checking. We think this has the potential to make TypeScript easier and faster to use for development at every scale. We'd like to talk about why we're pursuing this and how this proposal works at a high level. All right, cool. So now they kind of talk about the stuff behind like how things were before, because it was funny. They even kind of threw shots at their own browser because they're saying, so in some, okay, so they're saying, I'll just go through it because I can't see. Oh, yeah, right here. So if we go back to 2012, when TypeScript was first announced, wow, like 10 years, the JavaScript world was drastically different, which is true. The browser has gotten so much more capable, like it's amazing. And yeah, good stuff. Some browsers shipped often, but not all. It was unclear how long we'd be stuck with ancient versions of Internet Explorer. And it's funny, this is from Microsoft, and Microsoft created Internet Explorer. And that led to tools like bundlers and compilers gaining adoption. Because the thing was, there was such a vast difference between different browsers, like they were saying. Some shipped a lot of improvements and changes. Some just took forever. And anybody who has done like web development for a while, you knew you always had to wait for like, oh, will it work for Internet Explorer 6 or something? You know what I mean? So there's always that thing. And so they're saying like now, and we spoke about this last week about how the major browsers are all kind of coming together and trying to make sure everybody, all the browsers are on like a level playing field so that all the different features are available along all browsers, which is pretty cool. So stuff like that, they're saying that TypeScript was able to really thrive in the age where adding a build step to JavaScript was a given. After all, if you need to compile your JavaScript anyway, why not compile away your types too? So they're just saying like back then, since you had to kind of like compile your code anyway to make sure it was available along all the browsers, they're like, well, why not do typing also? You know what I'm saying? Do some type check stuff. So, but if those trends were mentioned above continue, like I was saying, with everybody getting on board and browsers getting more and more better, getting better, and then having things like built-in support for modules, which is pretty cool, and like web components use that stuff. So bundling became more of like an optimization. So like I use like Svelte and like Astro recently in projects, and those will compile so that it can have more optimized like bundles, smaller bundles. So it takes my code and like makes it more optimal for the browser to understand what's happening, right? So it's more of an optimization thing. It's not like I'm checking types and making sure things don't get like are the right values that they're supposed to be stuff. You know what I mean? And so so compiling away your types might be the only step between writing your TypeScript and running it. So now the same, because of all the optimizations and stuff, TypeScript might be the only reason why you would have to even compile. And they said, we don't want to be the one standing in the way of good developer experience. So that's cool to see. Like they don't want to be the reason why you have to go and have this build step, this compilation thing. You know what I mean? So that's thoughtful of them. So in some ways, our JavaScript support bridges the gap here. And maybe you've seen this if you've used an editor like Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. Today, you can create a JS file in your editor and start sprinkling types in the form of JS doc comments. And I've seen this before too. Like in different code bases, they'll have like JS docs. So JSDoc, I've seen it helps write like the documentation for certain libraries. So JSDoc, so you write your code, and then what's cool is JSDoc will be able to, because of these like commented things here, it will write out like the like little blocks of not code but like explanations of stuff. So it will say like, hey, A needs to be a number kind of thing. So it makes it a little bit easier. So it goes from code to documentation, which is kind of cool. And so that's how I've seen it before. And so you see this example here. The parameter A has to be a number. Parameter B has to be a number. And so when you do the add, it's going to return A plus B, and you should feel safe that it's going to be a number that comes back, right? So because in JavaScript, you can take two strings, put a plus sign between them, and now just literally take the two strings and put them together. So you can have like string 3 plus string 5, and then you put them together, that's 35 and not 8. So you can see how that could cause some issues. So they're saying, just like, because these are just comments, they don't change how the code runs at all. They're just a form of documentation, but TypeScript uses them to give you a better JavaScript editing experience through things like code completion. So like I said, making sure it's 8 and not 35. Refactorings and more. So sometimes when you refactor stuff, you may miss some things or take something out inadvertently, and you could, so you can mess things up. So with TypeScript, like, hey, where's this thing at? You can even add type checking by adding a / @tscheck comment at the top of your file, or running those files through the TypeScript compiler with check.js, which I've never seen before. I've never heard of that one before. All right. This feature makes it incredibly convenient to give some of the TypeScript experience without a build step. And you can use it for small scripts, basic web pages, server code in Node.js, etc. Still, you'll notice that this is a little verbose. We love how lightweight the inner loop is for writing JavaScript, but we're missing how convenient TypeScript makes it just to write types, just write types. So what if we had both, right? So now, what if we could have something like TypeScript syntax what if we could have something like TypeScript syntax, which is totally ignored, sort of like comments in JavaScript? So this is like how TypeScript kind of is, if I remember correctly. So you have the function, and you're saying A is a number, B is a number, and then return A plus B. So it's kind of like this. So you see how they have the types on the actual like parameters, but here they're in a comment. So they're saying like, what if we could do both? So our team believes that there is a lot of potential here, and this month we're hoping to bring it forward in a proposal, the TC39, which is like the governing body of JavaScript or ECMAScript standards community. So how it works. So there's a bunch of stuff here. The idea of this proposal is that JavaScript could carve out a set of syntax for types that engines would entirely ignore, right? So like all the different browsers would just ignore it, like they do with comments. But which tools like TypeScript, Flow, and others could use? So it's kind of like having like your own like little hidden messages, right? This allows us to keep things that you love about TypeScript is type checking and editing experience. That's another thing, like when you're coding and you have TypeScript, like if you put in like a variable or whatever, like it'll help you with like kind of completion, sort of like, oh, so if you put in like a method, it'll tell you like, oh, this method accepts A and B as numbers, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, and I know they're numbers. It's pretty cool. While removing the need for a build step in development. So like I said, here today you have your TypeScript file, then you need a Babel or whatever, and here's the build step, turning into JavaScript, and then the parsing and execution from the browsers, right? And which goes into ones and zeros. Cool. Because this is traversing the DOM tree, I believe, and then turning all into numbers. Because the browser actually goes through your file and turns it into ones and zeros so that the computer can understand. Now, what they're proposing is that instead of just a TypeScript file, you have JavaScript with types as like comments. Then you skip the whole compilation, and then you have parsing and execution, and then you go into You know what I'm saying? So you're skipping that whole compilation step, that build step, which you have to do on your computer. Like that's not done on the browser, like in the web. Like that's done on your computer. Or I think you can actually do, I think you have like stuff running in the cloud that will do it for you too, I think. I'm not sure. I don't use TypeScript a lot. I don't really huge. A lot of my projects are just like me working on stuff, and they're not like huge projects. But I'll use it if I'm using Angular, like if it comes with the framework or whatever I'm using, I'll use it. So like Angular uses TypeScript, Ionic, but not Ionic. Stencil uses TypeScript as well. And so if I'm working on those, I use it. So meanwhile, writing code and type checking would stay the same. A developer could get instant type checking feedback in an editor with TypeScript support. Run TypeScript on the command line and add TypeScript as a part of their CI task. So like I was saying, yeah, so your continuous integration, like, yeah, you can set it up. So when you push your code, it will do the type checking. Like, so I guess you can do that. I guess, again, it's been a minute since I've used TypeScript. So I guess now you can actually do it while your stuff is being worked on. All right, that's cool. Yes. So the biggest difference is that because we would not need a build step, we could dramatically lower the barrier to entry for JavaScript devs to experience the power of types and great tooling, which is, again, why I really don't use TypeScript, because you have to set up like a whole type definition file, and then you have to know like what everything is going to be kind of ahead of time. And then, so it's just kind of, yeah, I just code, I just write stuff. But I do see the purpose of it. Don't get me wrong. So like they're saying here, you have all the type checking stuff. So like if anything, you can get an error saying, hey, type string is not assignable to type number. Like we mentioned before, A and B, 3 and 5. You want 8, not 35. All right, so then it's talking about a whole bunch of stuff here. So there's more stuff you can do. And then, then you can have things like visibility modifiers. So you can say it's something private, public, or protected, which is cool because like especially for like web components, sometimes you don't want to have certain methods available to the outer application. You just want it to be within your web component. So stuff like that is pretty cool. So yeah. And so they're saying that what it actually isn't. And so our team isn't proposing putting TypeScript type checking in every browser and JavaScript runtime, nor are we proposing any new type checker to be put in the browser. So they're saying like, hey, we don't want anything to change with the browser. Like we're not forcing anything upon the browsers to do anything. So they said, we think doing that would cause problems for JavaScript and TypeScript users alike due to the range of issues such as runtime performance, compatibility issues, and existing TypeScript code, and the risk of halting innovation in the type checking space. So they're saying like, hey, we don't want to add type checking to the browsers. We're still beforehand before we ship to the browsers. But this is going to be a thing where while we're developing code and getting ready to deploy it, we can find errors and things with types and stuff like that. And so, yeah. So they're just proposing a syntax on when we write the code that'll be ignored by the browsers, but like editors would be like, oh, okay, you're using these certain syntax, maybe comments or whatever. Let me go and check these types because your editor will be the one doing the type checking, not the browser. So then it's talking about they're going to submit it and stuff like that. So shout out to Daniel and everybody. Rosenwasser, senior program manager TypeScript over at Microsoft. So and the whole team. So that's pretty cool. They're all working on stuff, and I think that's pretty cool. Like I said, I see the need for like TypeScript, especially when you're working on a team with a bunch of other people on a large application. Because when I was working at like a corporate job, or more corporate, because I still work for a corporation, but we were building like websites for banks, so super corporate. And so when you have a team of people all kind of working in the same code base and everybody's writing the same thing, we're using like Angular. And so it was good to know like, hey, this variable can only be a number. And that's super important when you're dealing with like financial institutions and money, right? So you want to make super sure everything is what you expect it to be. And so with types and tests and all that stuff, you have an extra layer of like feeling good that your code is going to be work the way you want it. And so I think it's pretty cool. So like I said, it would be like less upfront work, and I think more people would do it, and then you have to create like interfaces and type definitions and all these other stuff like beforehand and all these things. And so it might be cool to like even go back to old JavaScript code and add those things in, which could be kind of cool, because I know places where like you have like your JavaScript and then TypeScript became like a huge thing, and you're like, oh, well, I gotta go and check all this code in so that turn them into TypeScript things and do all this other stuff. I think with this, you just add some comments and it should be good. So at least that's what I'm thinking. So I think it's pretty cool. Shouts to them. Looking forward to see more what comes out of it. And let me stop this. So what do you think? Do you think this will be something helpful in moving forward JavaScript? Because I'm a big fan of anything that's going to move forward JavaScript and make it more like useful for developers, you know what I mean? And easier for developers to kind of check. Because especially if you're coming into like a new, that's another thing with TypeScript. Like if you're looking at a new code base, you can kind of see like, oh, okay, this type should have these things in it. And you can get a kind of a better feel of what is going on within everything. So I think it's cool. I think it should be interesting to see if it happens and how it happens and the way it's going to be turned into stuff. So I think that's pretty cool. And yeah, so shouts to them again for doing this. So there's that. All right, cool. Let's get back to work, because again, I think I'm going to actually see about placing this order for this stuff and just get it done. You know what I'm saying? Because I could watch YouTube videos all day. And so I want to get more stuff done. So yeah, so I think this next break, I am going to just purchase. I might watch like another video and then purchase, put in an order for some packing compression cubes. And we'll see how that works. All right. So thanks again for hanging out. I'm going to send you all with some traveling music. And this is Anthony Cruz, aka A Butta. The track is called Thank You. And I wish you much productivity within this next work session. And if nobody signs up for show and tell, we'll take a look at an artist's website and listen to some music, maybe watch some videos. All right. So again, thanks for hanging out, and see you soon. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
I want to say thank you for holding on when a brother was down and out. Now I feel so strong, and I want to say thank you for being there when a brother had nowhere to turn to. You were there, and I feel like hell. And everybody says hell. We spread a love like hell. I want to say thank you for holding on when a brother was down and out. Now I feel so strong, and I want to say thank you.